Hello and welcome to this episode of How to Be a Great Player. Well, it's midsummer here in bonny South Africa, so I'm afraid the heat is on. But that's not what we're looking at in today's video. Today's video, we're looking at how to level up your character in such a way that it makes narrative sense. Now, this channel has never been about min-maxing stats and number crunching to create the ultimate killer. It's always been about the story. So when we're talking leveling up, that's what we're talking about as well. And it can be a surprising guide in terms of molding and evolving your character out of the path that you might have already selected for them and into different avenues and areas that you'd never even considered before. And so as a result, for me, leveling up is an opportunity to reevaluate, reassess, and to look at just where the character is heading and how they're going to get there. Now, the first way that we look at it is, what did the PC, what did your character learn on their journey in the previous sessions? Maybe they started to realize that they were not very good at long-range combat. Or perhaps they realized that there's more to cooking than just meets the eye because of a failed campfire cooking incident. Maybe they learned a little bit more about themselves. Maybe they learned a little bit more about the world, and it's bigger than they thought it was. Whatever they took away from the previous session, and it's very important for you to analyze what happened in the previous session and reflect upon it, and think about the implications of every action that happened in that previous event and how that would affect you as a person if you had been through that. So if you look at it from your PC's perspective, you then need to look at that and decide, well, no, I don't think there was any influence from the previous session because my PC was fairly active but managed to get the job done. So their course of action is fixed and resolute. On the other hand, the PC may have had an encounter with a deity or a particularly powerful entity that has done something different to them. So reflect back on what has happened and how that might influence what the character decides to do moving forward in terms of education, in terms of development, in terms of what skills they are going to focus on. Because arguably, leveling up is the accrual of the experiences from the previous session, now resulting in a better character and a more rounded character. Now, the other thing to look at is flavor skills. It's nice to have skills that are needed and that are used on an everyday basis. So in a modern day setting, computer use, for example, or driving might be skills that you would deem to be of absolute importance. Calligraphy, on the other hand, might not be, or astronomy, or biology. Pick a random flavor skill that makes sense for your character to have and add it. It's something that we've discovered. Oh, really? You used to collect butterflies when you were young, and you've got one skill point in biology? Oh, that's very interesting. It might not have any value to the game itself, other than creating a more rounded, more holistic character. I guarantee you, the next time you create a character and that character collects butterflies, the players are going to remember that character for a long time to come. Remember when we were walking across that field and all that you wanted to do was catch the butterflies because you were obsessed with them? Well, that creates an impression. And that's from a skill that has no major benefit. So if you want to create lasting stories, it's also about looking at what skills you have and what skills you can get that are different or unique and that stand out from the rest of the crowd. Now, your PC's goals might have changed during the course of the adventure. If your PC was hunting down a figure and realized that the figure was just a small component of a much bigger story, maybe it's time for that PC to reassess their skills and to realize that, well, what they were going to do is not necessarily going to work. They thought they were fighting undead, when in actual fact it's the necromancer and his occult people who are still very much living that are behind the entire thing. So the path of Ghost Hunter, for example, may no longer be applicable. We, in our daily lives, go through those kinds of shifts all the time. We look for work, we get work, we realize we need those skills rather than those skills, and things change. It's very seldom that we get to use the skills that we want to do the work that we want to do. And when you do get that, you're very lucky. So it's about looking at how have your PC's goals changed as well as a result of the previous session. So you're looking at the previous session from what did your PC experience, what did they go through, but you're now also looking at it in terms of what did they achieve and how does that affect their future goals and their future aspirations, and how might they change their educational pathway to better suit that outcome rather than the one that you thought it was going to originally be. You then need to look and see if your PC drew any kind of inspiration from an individual. Is there some kind of hero worship going on? Did your NPC come across a character that was particularly spectacular? Maybe they were terrifically powerful and scared the PC into submission. Maybe the PC doesn't want that to ever happen again. Maybe the PC wants to emulate that person. We often change course as a result of encountering people in real life that leave their mark. There's no reason why your PC shouldn't be as malleable as we are in real life. It creates a much more interesting PC, and PCs that have changed over time originally started as, oh, I'm going to be the world's greatest archer, and ended up being a sword and shield frontline fighter just because of the course of their adventures, is a much more interesting PC than the PC who was going to become the greatest archer and becomes the greatest archer. There's very little story to that. There's very little narrative around that. That's just someone building the character to become the ultimate archer. Now, finally, something else to look at is, does the advancement make sense? I've got one player who's busy playing in my Windswift campaign on our sister channel. You can head on over and have a look at that, Bacon Battalion RPG. And the character is playing a paladin. Now, at 3rd level, the paladin is supposed to get some kind of power, divine abilities and things. And the player has said to me, until I get to a space where my character can go on a divine quest, where my character can experience the divine, I'm not going to level up. I'm going to wait until that happens. What I will do is I'll take the hit points and I'll take the this and I'll take the that, but I won't gain the new powers that would come with the enlightenment of that experience that my character must have. As the GM, I've responded by ensuring that their next point of departure, the next point of interest in the campaign, is a religious space and will allow for that to happen. Having said that, they are players and they are more than likely going to head in the opposite direction, away from the temple. As a good GM, I will locate another temple on their pathway to make sure that my player gets what he wants, but just not necessarily in the way that he expected. But for me, that's good character progression. It's not progression, as a matter of fact. It's character stagnation until the character reaches one of those moments of aha, life-changing events that causes the character to take a new course of action. It's a good narrative-based character development, and one that I personally think is much better than just a linear one where you're trying to get to that ultimate goal that you set out. Are you really enjoying the journey if you have a fixed goal end scenario type hero and you just go from A to B? Sometimes it's good to break off the path. Till then, less philosophizing from me, more character building and playing from you. And if you like this, hit the like button. If you want to see more of these, hit the subscribe button. And coming up the next few weeks, something that might be of interest to you, is we start to explore each of the classes in traditional fantasy, and we unpack their various role-playing opportunities, their narrative abilities, and the possibilities of story that each of those different classes brings, and maybe looks at each class from a slightly different angle than the normal way of how to build the ultimate two-handed barbarian, or the ultimate rogue, or the ultimate wizard. We look at it how to create the best and most interesting story for a barbarian, for a wizard, or for a fighter. So those are coming up in the next couple of weeks. Watch out and look out for those. They promise to be very interesting. Until next time, I wish you and yours the happiest of playing.